Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is Leading with a Champion Mindset.
I'm going to guess that a few people in here know who Brandi Chastain is. Just a guess. I don't think everyone knows what a big deal it is to have you here, to have you come out here from the West Coast, because as we're going to find out, you've been a little busy right now. You've got some things going on, which we're going to talk about. But thank you very much for being here to talk about such an important topic that I know is near and dear to your heart, which is leadership. And when we talk about leadership, I think it's appropriate that we're having this conversation at this venue, talking to marketers about leadership. Because when I think of leadership, leaders come in all kinds of, all stripes, all types of leaders. Right. But there are three things that define a leader. So one is a journey. Right? We all go on journeys, but there are certain inflection points along that journey that inform what a leader is. The second part of it is having that journey lead to a vision, having a really clear and strong vision of what that looks like. And then the final part is the greatest leaders out there have a platform. Right? We've been talking about platforms all day. And having that platform, nobody knows more about platforms than you, because you were really, you used a viral platform before viral was even a thing, which we're absolutely going to talk about. So I wanted to spend some time kind of going through each one of those pillars. And we're going to start with the journey. So tell us a little bit about your journey and some of the inflection points along the way.
Well, this is a fun topic for me. Obviously, I come to you through the lens of sports, and even more specifically, women's sports, and then even more specifically, women's soccer. So that is, when I think back to the journey, and we were just speaking, Jenè and I, earlier, about how, for me, I think throughout my journey, I've learned that the journey is really the destination. And and that's not to say that setting goals is not critical. It really is. But the journey is the destination in that we have to really examine the moments. And we have to be in the moments. And I think that comes to me as the soccer player, because it's a 90-minute game. We don't have timeouts. There's no the only time the ball stops is at halftime or if it goes out of bounds. And the ball is in play probably, of 90 minutes, 60 minutes, but it's, in seconds. So it's not like you get a big break. So you get accustomed to, or your habits become taking information in all the time, right? Whether that's looking over your shoulder, whether that's communicating with the player next to you, that's evaluating what the score is, where are we in the game, just all that's going around. And so for me, now it's been a journey for me to get to this point. And I will offer that up and say that I think leadership is in constant evolution. Sometimes I'll be a vocal leader, sometimes it's a leader by action, sometimes it's a leader in support of others. It looks different all the time. But the journey to me is something that I think we all need to really embrace, and we need to, I think, support that for other people as well, right? I'm learning. Again, I'm growing all the time. I'm listening to podcasts that are telling me that my brain is still plastic, that I can learn new things, and that it's important that I do so. So I think initially that's how I would start this conversation, is that I've really looking at leadership in a way that shows up in action. It shows up as selfless. It shows up when you least expect it. It doesn't show up just because you have a title before your name. And I think that's something that's really key, because there are some people who believe that leadership doesn't belong to them. And I want them to know that their journey too has leadership. It's just that something is around the corner, and you have to be ready. That's another thing I tell my players is like, #be ready, because it's coming. It's absolutely coming.
So, and tell us a little bit about, when you talk about the sort of points along your journey, I've heard you talk specifically about, one, where you grew up, which is where I grew up, in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and sort of the qualities of growing up in that environment, in a really, a pioneering kind of area. So, how is the thought of the Bay Area and what you experienced growing up all the way into college, how has that impacted you?
Well, number one, I want to say that I think that my experience could be somebody else's experience. It just so happened to be the Bay Area is where I grew up, so I didn't know any better about, the fact that I had parents who thought it was exciting or interesting that I like to be outside and running around and being active. And, even though there wasn't a lot of other girls that were doing that, they encouraged me. And so, I think with the weather being nice, I could be outside all the time. They learned right away that I needed an outlet. And so I think signing me up for sports seemed to fulfill this thirst that I had for competition and for getting mildly dirty, and really challenging myself. And so I think that is something that, we talk in the journey is really important, because I think that goes along with, supporting people where they are. And when you have teams, and I'm sure you're all a part of teams, you don't live in a place by yourself and you interact with other people, is that we need to support other people along their journey, and we have to encourage them. And I think that environment, the idea that we innovate and we take risks and we are going to fall down and we're going to get back up. And so I think that for me it was something really special. I also happened to have a mother who did something remarkable for our family, which was she gave up her career, because at the time she was a flight attendant, and to be a flight attendant, you couldn't be married or have kids, and so she had to give that up. And then she became a vice president of a company without a secondary education, and so she was a real walking example about a journey doesn't have to look one way to have what I think most people would say success at that way station. So, for me, I think just being in an environment that was very supportive, very open, and to be honest with you, I didn't care if anybody said I couldn't play. I went out there and I think I put things to action, and I bullied my way into some games, I'll say that.
That worked out well for you. So, I love the idea of action, because one of the things I think about, it's been a very long time coming, but I think I can confidently say that women's sports in general is having a moment.
A long moment, hopefully.
Yes, a long moment that is turning into a movement.
Right.
And because we are, we're talking with marketers, and we talk in metrics and stats and KPIs. I'm going to throw some out at you, and then I'd love to get your take on this. So, FIFA Women's World Cup this year. Yes. Crossed.
It was a little bit it was like emotional for me.
Crossed 2 million attendees.
Right.
First time ever.
You could clap for that.
You can definitely.
There we go. Yeah.
Women's basketball, March Madness, 4.7 billion engagements online. Nothing ever even close to it.
Yeah.
Since we're in New York, U.S. Open a couple weeks ago, Coco Gauff
Yep.
outdrew,
Yep.
viewership outdrew the men's final, some guy named Novak Djokovic, 3-1.
Wow.
And then my last stat, which I really love this one, women's volleyball. At the University of Nebraska,
Yeah.
sold out a stadium, 92,000
Crazy.
to
Yes.
watch a women's volleyball game.
Amazing.
So again, I don't think anyone can argue that women's sports is having a sustained
Yes.
moment.
Yes.
So I'd love to get your take on why now? Why this time?
Well, I was really having this moment like 30 years ago, so it is a sustained moment for me. You know, I think there's a lot of factors, to be honest with you. I think there is people like a Billie Jean King, for example. There's a lot of people who are responsible for having enacted Title IX in 1972, very responsible. You know, the fact that compliance to Title IX took a long time, whether that be at the collegiate level or even now we're talking about lower levels, right? You know, that took a while, even though it was enacted. But you know, there was people that were churning this, you know, below the surface. And I think, to be honest with you, there's a lot of it's the way we've done things that got in the way, right? We're comfortable in what we're doing. We don't like change. You know, why should I change if it's not broke? You know, these kind of mentalities. And I think, honestly, we were talking last night about the amazing platform, and we'll get into, I mean, that women's sports is going to offer marketers and sponsors and people that they just haven't been able to experience before, because nobody's been willing to invest in women's sports in the way that they're starting to now. And we talked about whether it's 80% of dollars or 85% of the dollars in households are spent by women making big decisions for, you know, their kids, you know, just how remarkable that is. And yet we've been knocking and pounding on the door for a long time. But now I think it's because we're just tired. I think one is we're tired of not being heard. I think two, we're showing that we have deep resources, meaning we're educated, intelligent, talented, capable human beings that can do the work.
Imagine that.
That have, yeah, you know, that are passionate, that are in it for the long haul. You know, they're invested in what this is, and so, you know, I think it's just becoming undeniable. And I think when you talk about women's basketball, I think of the video that went out. You know, I go back and forth on social media about, you know, the goods and the bads, and, you know, how we have to moderate social media. But when it allows us to bring eyeballs to a situation that is totally unbalanced, like the NCAA playoffs, when the weight room for the women had like one rack of weights and the men's weight room was like 3 football fields, you know, and that just, I think it brings it to light. You know, it's not just complaining, it's real. And so I think, you know, that was very helpful. And to your point about how many people have been paying attention, you know, the World Cup, 32 teams, never before. There were, you know, this is the first time there was 3 African nations that we had teams that had never been there before, never scored a World Cup goal, never had a victory. All of that happened, and just phenomenal, to be honest with you. And the fact that, you know, millions of tickets were sold, 2 million of tickets were sold, is incredible. And I think back to 1999, and I think, why? Why did so many people show up? One, I think we love a big event, right? We're suckers for a big event here. 2, we love winning. I mean, that's for sure. But I think we saw something, right? We were moved by what we were seeing and what we were feeling. And I think sports specifically have the, you know, they bring about this emotion in us. And I think when you see it, you can't help but get hooked. And so for me, I think women's sports has all of those things and more.
Very, very well said. I love that you brought up 1999, July 10th, 1999, to be specific. And I've heard you talk about how you put that moment in perspective and the kind of questions that you ask people, because I mean, it's probably every day, someone comes up to you and says, I was there at that moment. So tell us a little bit about how you think about that.
Well, I think now when anybody says, take off your shirt, I say, heck no, it's 24 years ago. Trying to live up to that has not been easy, I'll tell you. So I'm trying to work every day on that. But for me, it's really, I'm such a sports fan. I love sports. Again, I love watching the players, but I love taking in kind of the whole environment of what sports brings, right? The ahs and the ohs and the everything in between, and why that gets us excited. And I want to know the inspiration of why you showed up or why you turned on the television. Who brought you to the game? Who were you with? Who were you with? Why were you watching? And what did it make you feel? And if I know, it's like you have to know your players, right? If you know where they're coming from, if you understand their motivation, then you can exponentially change that experience for the better, right? I know what they feel, I know what they like, I know how they like it, and we're going to give them more of that. And so I ask that all the time. I'm like, okay, tell me, what seat were you in? What did you eat before? Who were you with? Why were you there? And anybody here happened to be at the Rose Bowl in 1999? Please, one person, no? Were you all alive then, for God's sakes? At least, yes. Did anybody watch it live on TV? Yes. Ah. Anybody want to share the who's, the whys, and the what you were doing?
Oh, we got one back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what made you turn on the television? Because you were probably golfing or something else. Really? And was the restaurant at first like, what? Why would we do that?
No, they received put it on. I think they had the news on or something.
Yeah, it's better than the news for sure. For sure.
It was the news.
So you were with your family.
Yes.
Awesome. And how were you feeling as the game went on, and then the final moment? That moment.
Well, I remember the end the most, and not just because of your celebration, but everybody in the whole place was going nuts. I remember that. I'll never forget where I was for that.
That is awesome. Anybody else? Yes.
I was 11 years old, and I was playing soccer with all my friends, and my dad was my coach, and so we all got together and watched it, and I just remember everything, like Grand Scurry and Ham and you, of course, and it's like, soccer I'm so passionate about, and it's because of you guys, and I think I'm a little emotional through talking about it. It's like, you ladies changed my life.
May I ask your name? Amy? It's nice to meet you, Amy. Thank you so much for watching. And I want to ask another question, if that's okay. After that moment that you all watched it together, then how do you remember it changing any mindset or changing the way you showed up every day, whether that's in school or to the soccer field?
Sports in general and the leadership that comes with it. I think, I don't want to speak for the teams that I've been on and the teams that I currently work with, but I see so much of just you talk about the quiet leadership, and I feel like I bring a lot of that because there's 11 players on the field, and usually it's one superstar or a few, but it's always one of my favorite teams is our quiet center back who kind of runs the show without saying anything. And, I look to kind of that type of leadership by action example, and Steve Keenan, I've always kind of taken that along with me, and I just, I'm in the moment, I'm in the base, I can see the basement, I can see my whole team moving, and I just, never forget that.
That's the
the
kind of moment.
impact.
That's the kind of moment I had in 1980 when the men's ice hockey team won the gold medal at Lake Placid, and it was the aha moment for me. Even though it was men skating, and I lived in California, I'd never played hockey ever. But when I saw Mike Eruzione step up onto the podium, and he unfurled the flag behind him, and he had it out, and then he called his teammates to the podium to, be with him. It wasn't just him, right, as the captain. I said to myself, I want to do that. And I didn't really know what that meant, to be honest with you, because I didn't have a real life role model or team that I could see. But that's really what has evolved from Title IX. That's really what has happened since, 1991, when the first World Cup for women happened in China. And now, you, Amy, and every other generation after that will have that example. And I think that is something that has yet to be really examined and to be brought forward. The power of those emotions that you had today. And I'll tell you, when you talk about leadership and in a moment when, as a center back, you see everything, right? You see the whole field. You're really the voice of reason behind people. And I'm going to tell you a quick story, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I know we
love a good story.
I do love a good story. So the Women's World Cup in 1999, all the headlines, all the media around it was talking about the future of women's soccer. And the future of women's soccer was dependent on one thing. And when I say women's soccer, I mean globally. I'm not talking about in your backyard or my backyard. I'm talking about the global significance of women's soccer. The second part was that the U.S. women's national team had to win the World Cup, like as if it was that easy. I mean, right? It was just a plain statement. The future of women's soccer is dependent on the U.S. women's national team winning the World Cup. Now, we had done it before, but the previous World Cup, we came in third, so it's not like we just show up and it happens. And we saw this summer that you can't just show up because it just doesn't happen. So here we are, we've made it to the quarterfinal. We met our first, we got to the first way station of climbing Mount Everest, right? So we climbed, we were in the group stages, we got to the first way station, we unpacked, we took a look, we have to play Germany. Germany came in second in their group, which we weren't anticipating, so this is gonna be a harder game in the quarterfinal than we wanted. But, you're gonna have to play the best to be the best, so, okay, here we go. We're playing in DC in a brand new stadium at the time, Jack Cook Stadium. Nobody had played there, 75,000 screaming lunatics, right, ready for soccer. And I initially in my career started out as a goal scorer. I wanted the ball. I wanted to be the person who contributed. I wanted to be the person who made the difference. I wanted to score the goals. I wanted to get that glory, right? I was a terrible teammate as a young kid. Thank goodness I learned ate a lot of humble pie along the way, I'll tell you. And this is one of those moments. We're 6 minutes in, and I'm now a defender, right? The coach has changed my position. He's put me as left back. I've now had the Olympics under my belt, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable. The ball's in transition in the midfield area, back and forth. Nobody really has possession, and now the ball gets kicked in the air between the center back, Carla Overback, who happened to be our captain, and myself. And as the ball was kicked, I took my eye off the ball to see where the nearest German player was and to evaluate, was that pressure going to be a lot, a little, what was going on. So as I realized, no problem, I'm gonna make a simple play. I'm just gonna, I love to be fancy, I'm not gonna lie, as you can tell by my sparkly jacket, right? But not in this position and not in this part of the field. This is not where you take risks. This is conservative, this is just do the right thing, this is make sure. So as I was thinking about those things, to be in the moment, stay in the moment, right? I didn't communicate, and as we know, communication is key in relationships. And I put my head down and I passed the ball. As I did that, the goalkeeper came out, it went past her and into the goal. Exactly, only with some four-letter words. Right? So you can imagine what was going through my head. Why did the coach put me in this position? I'm not good enough. Why did, I've lost the game. The future of women's soccer. Right? 1-0, we're losing to Germany, who, after that World Cup, became world champions 2 times, back to back. So they were a very good team. And we ran back to get the ball, and it just crosses the line. And so now, your head goes down, and all of a sudden I heard this clap, and I'll never forget it. And if I ever hear it again, I'll know that Carla Overbeck is somewhere near me. I looked up, and she said, "Don't worry about it. We have a lot of game left. Remember, this is 6 minutes into the game. We have a lot of game left, and you're going to help us win." And I was like, all right. And I think I skipped to my position. Like, she literally took away all of that questioning and put in trust and worth and value. And that, to me, was leadership in action. But not leadership where she thought about it the night before. Leadership is going to show up in a way for all of you where you're going to have to take action, and you have to be ready, and she was ready in that moment. And so I think, to Amy, to the emotion about it, and, just being in the moment with your teammates and taking on leadership, that to me is something that stuck with me for forever. It will never go away. It will show up for me every day, whether it's in small gestures or large, big victories or small ones. And so I want to make sure that you leave here today with knowing that leadership belongs to you, and that the fate of women's soccer, right? Something that grand can really rely on something so simple. And that all of us really need to put that in our pocket and know that it belongs to us.
That is so beautifully said. And we are going to see that philosophy come to reality in March?
Yes.
2024. Tell us about BFC.
Yes, so thank you so much. BFC is the next expansion team that will be a part of the NWSL. We will be playing, thank you. Myself and 3 other founding members, Danielle Slayton, Leslie Osborne, Allie Wagner, we all played together on the national team at one point, and all went to Santa Clara University, as it turns out. And we had a vision. We're talking about visions, and we wanted to bring women's soccer back. This is the 3rd iteration of women's professional soccer. We've had some very good, bad experiences, meaning like we've learned a lot. And now, to your point earlier about, why is this time the time? This is an investment by 6th Street, and they have done something no other entity has done in their investment in women's sports. And I think when an organization like 6th Street commits to women's sports in the way that they have, it's meaningful and it's powerful, and it reminds other people that maybe there's something there. And so we're very excited. We just announced our coach. We will start to get players, so that's what you need. You need players to play the game. And free agency, that window just opened, so we're very excited. Our preseason will begin in January, and we will come to New York to play a game. So if you're from here, you can see the Bay FC play. But if you're not, please come, and I've got an extra room so you can, knock on my door. But come, be a part of women's soccer. We're inviting everybody, and we're very excited about this journey. We talked about that. Again, the journey is really the destination. What can this time of women's sports and women's soccer specifically look like in the business sector?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we've got 30 seconds left. It goes by too fast.
We knew it was going to fly by.
Very quickly, because you told me this story, the sports bra, where is it?
Whew. Thank goodness I have it back. I did loan it to a museum here in New York City that unfortunately fell on hard times. I think it was during 2008. And then all the items in the museum got put into a container and shipped to New Jersey. Careful. You might not get it back. I almost didn't get it back for the 10th anniversary, but I did. And now it's in a frame on my wall, and I've been thinking about, Smithsonian has asked, could we put it on display, and that's something possibly in the future. But I wore it a few times after that '99 game because laundry got a little high and I got a little low on the sports bra. But yeah, so that is a good reminder every day that I see it about the journey, about the platform we now have, because so many women worked so hard and they had a vision about what could be. And it's a reminder that every day I have to be in action. I have to be action-oriented and get out there and make a difference.
Thank you so much.